Thank you so much. Is my mic on? Can you guys hear me all right? Yeah? All right, cool. Sign of good mic, right? You can't hear the feedback. Anyway, well, I am so super excited to be with you guys here today. I'm probably going to stand on this side of the platform and because I'm kind of a walker, but I'll be relegated to this space. Anyway, my name's Mariah Hay, VP of Product at Pluralsight, and I'm super excited to talk to you about this topic of product management. Is there anybody in the audience that's a product manager? Okay, we've got a few. Anybody that's an aspiring product manager? Just wants to learn more about product management? Uh-oh, I saw a hand go up and some laughter. We're going to get you there. Well, it's so great to have you guys here before. And I'm really here to talk about the misconception around product management. Product management is kind of like in the same bucket as UX. It's a term that's thrown around a lot. It's a role that's nebulous, and it's different at different companies. And people just don't know quite what to make of it. So we're going to unpack this today. We're going to start out with 3 lessons. And the first thing that we're going to talk about is all of the different variations in PM roles and why that exists today. Because if you have a little context, it's a little easier for you to understand how to approach going into a role in a company. If you're part of a team or a leader, how to approach working with an individual that's a PM, or even putting a PM on a team to be as effective as possible. The second is the anatomy of a super PM. So what are the bench of skills that you need to come into a position or bring to a position in a very evolved PM role in a product company? And then last but not least, we're going to dig into org design for PM success. So it's one thing to have all of these amazing skills and bring them into a company, but if your organization is not set up to support product like that, it doesn't matter. So what do you look for when you go into a job? Or if you're a leader, how do you need to evolve your org design in order to get there? So, sound good? All right. So let's start out with the wide variation. Can anybody tell me why there's such a wide variation? Any brave souls this morning? All right. Well, I won't force you to speak. But, so in my opinion, and it might be your opinion as well, product manager is a newish role. And when I say newish, when you think about, what was it? It's the 10th anniversary of the iPhone right now. Well, you might not be aware of this, particularly if you're kind of newer in the industry, if you're just out of college. But when you look at the history of software and software as a service, 10 years ago, before the iPhone, most software that was out there, if you worked for a software company, what you were doing was creating B2B software, which means what you were creating was to be used in the context of a business by humans trying to do their job for the business. And so you had less of the app development. You had a little bit, but it was very minor compared to the B2B space, business to business. And what the iPhone did, and all of the app stores that are out there now with Android and iOS, is it created this new space of software development. And this new space skyrocketed the needs of all of the app development. So suddenly you had all these B2C, business-to-consumer sales going on, and customers weren't using the software in the context of their own company. So you take that kind of thing and you combine it with adjacent roles that were happening that were product manager-esque in the past, that happened around marketing and brand. And then you look into kind of the business world, and you had strategy and business development, product or project manager roles. And then you also had technology, QA, client services, research, innovation, communications. In all of these areas, there is somebody that needs to be the lightning rod of communication and facilitation for teams. And it looks very different depending on which of these areas you are on, but it seems very similar in practice, which creates all of these misconceptions around what product management really is. Now, today what I'm going to be talking about is product management in the digital space, mainly for software as a service. But just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I started out in physical product development, which again is another adjacency that we'll go into in a moment. But there still are a lot of truths and threads that run through these, no matter what kind of product that you're doing, moving forward, because it's all about understanding a problem, facilitating and empowering a team to deliver a solution. So just to kind of give you a little context, I really started to become obsessed with product management about 2 years ago. I am one of the biggest human-centered design nerds that you will ever meet, hands down. I would be willing to mentally arm wrestle anybody on that one. And 2 years ago was no exception. I was speaking at a conference called Fusion Day. I was lucky. This is how I met Berman, who is another speaker that spoke this morning, Berman Painter, runs this one in North Carolina. And I was there. You can see the highlighted people. I was talking about UX and how UX can be confused with UI, and totally nerding out. And the cool thing was I was speaking with these two other speakers, Gilbert Lee and Nate Walkingshaw. Gilbert spoke before me, and he talked about design with the big D, design as solution and problem solving. And so I got to get super nerdy on organizational design and practices within the company, because these are things that help empower autonomous teams to do their best work. And he took notice, and so did Nate Walkingshaw, who I didn't even get to see speak. And they took notice because they were doing the same thing. Nate came up to me after my talk. I didn't know who he was, and he's like, "Mariah, oh my gosh, we're doing exactly what you're talking about." And I was kind of like, "Sure you are." Because I didn't believe Nate, because I had a lot of baggage around this. The reason I go and speak about this at conferences is because people give it lip service. They say, yes, our product teams do human-centered design, but when the rubber hits the road, I have heard time and time again, team leads go, "Oh, well, we don't have time to do discovery. We don't have time to do research. We don't have time to talk to the customer." And so they just go build whatever the executive says, or the sales team says, or the marketing team says will sell, but they're not actually building it for the customer, which is why I didn't believe Nate. But if any of you ever get the pleasure of meeting Nate Walkingshaw, who's our Chief Experience Officer, you will soon realize that it was probably a personal mission that when I said no, he was going to get me to come to Utah and see what they were doing. So he did. He called me for weeks after this conference and finally convinced me to come out and see what they were doing. And I wasn't looking for a job. I'm like, I'm running this agency in Dallas. I'm really happy with my life. And he's like, no, just come see it. Just come and talk to all of the teams and see what we're doing. And so finally, just to get him to stop calling me, I was like, all right, I'll come out to Utah, and we're going to nerd out, and it's going to be amazing. But there is no way I'm moving to Utah. So I went out to Utah, and I spent 2 full days with the team. And being a person that is a human-centered design research nerd, I can dig into the psyche of just about anyone or any instance. And that's what my mission was to do. I wanted to go to Utah and figure out things like, how were all of the teams engaging with their users? How were they taking this information they were gathering from their users and synthesizing it to inform what they needed to go tackle? What were they doing to test things once they had created them? What did the teams look like? What was the collaboration like? How did they work with marketing? How did they work with sales? How did they work with each other? Because they have quite a few teams. What was the culture like? Did it support them? Were they truly autonomous? These were all the things I really wanted to understand during my 2 days with them. And particularly around the product managers. And I spent the 2 days, and I really dug in. And as I left on that Friday afternoon and drove downtown to meet my partner, Joe, and I walked into the hotel room, I felt like this, that feeling in the pit of your stomach like you're about to go over a precipice. And I was kind of like, hey, Joe, how do you think about moving to Utah? So, you know, the thing that I saw when I was there with the teams, the thing that got me so excited was not just what the UX designers were doing, but what the whole team was doing, particularly the product managers. Because I finally felt like, for the first time in my career, I saw product managers and UX designers and developers as a team creating powerful experience designs through going and learning from their customers. just to give you a little context of how this was indeed the first time I've seen this in my career, I want you to take a little journey with me and walk a mile in what my shoes had been as a professional so you can see what I was seeing when I was there talking to all of the team members. So I started my career, like I mentioned, as an industrial designer. I have my MFA in industrial design. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the term industrial design, it is physical product development. People that design electronics, computers, your iPhone, this microphone, the chairs you're sitting in, the cars you drive, the stuff you buy from IKEA that only lasts for 2 years. That's what I did for a living. In fact, I worked in luggage for a while, which is what this job was. I worked as the product development coordinator for a company called Briggs & Riley Travelwear. Ugh, I can't get it out of my mouth. Anyway, it's indestructible. They have a lifetime warranty. I didn't like working for the company, but they make great luggage, so. Anyway, what I was doing was basically product management. I was sourcing materials. I was designing. I was going to the factories in China. I was doing Q&A. All of the things that you would expect a product manager and a designer to do kind of roll into one. The thing I wasn't doing, which gave me heartburn, because here I am right out of grad school, is I knew what human-centered design was supposed to be, but we weren't doing any of it. In fact, I talked to users like 2% of the time. And it was basically to see like if the luggage could get in the overhead compartment properly that magically changes sizes on airplanes all the time. So that was my first kind of foray into a product management role. Now next, I decided, this was about the time the iPhone took off and all of these startup companies started happening around social media, and I jumped on board that train. In fact, I thought it was so interesting that I could take human-centered design and apply it to the digital world that I went and took a job as a project manager and an interaction designer. And in a small startup company of 8 people, you wear a lot of hats, which is why I kind of had this like role with a slash in it. But what I was really doing was all of the things that I was doing in physical product development, but doing it on the digital side. So wireframings and requirements documents and timelines and coordination. And what yet again, I found I was not empowered to go talk to the users. In fact, all of our requirements for our products had come from 2 of the co-founders who often argued with each other about what they should be. So that doesn't make for a very powerful product. What it makes for is kind of a product with a lot of tension that's just getting thrown into the market without the actual use case for what it's going to do when it's out there. So that company, because the founders didn't like each other very much, does not exist anymore, and I moved on. I decided to go work for the agency side at this time, Bfg Communications. I was an interactive project manager. Again, doing very much the same thing, looking at project scopes, timelines, quality. We were guns for hire because we were an agency, so I was collecting all the requirements from our clients, who, guess what they hadn't done? Gone and talked to their users. Again, a pretty non-powerful place. So at that point, I was like, you know, if nobody's going to empower me to go do this, I'm going to go have to build the team myself. And so I decided to take a job at a very large enterprise, Vizient. And while I wasn't the leader per se, I was on a cross-functional team, which was actually empowering these team members to go do this research. It was like an internal IDEO. It's where we had project management, design, research, business strategy. We were getting together, looking at commercialization opportunities 3 to 5 years out in the healthcare area. And once again, so we got to do all the research, mind you. It was phenomenal. I got to go talk to people, go do contextual research. Instead of informing a digital design at this point, we were informing kind of a design of what a new company could be. But it's very much the same thing, minus the UI. And it was really phenomenal until they decided to hire a project manager. And all she wanted to do was Gantt charts and box checking and timelines. And if any of you have ever worked in the innovation space, you know that it's highly iterative. And time boxing and timelines like that just don't work. You do move fast, but box checking doesn't help. And I was so frustrated at this point. I was like, well, okay, I am going to go have to lead this in a company. And so I ended up leaving them. and I took a job as Director of User Experience at AMC Health. And AMC Health is kind of your small company, 150 people. And I love the healthcare space. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I won't go into it today, but if any of you want to come talk about the Affordable Care Act, let's talk. So at AMC Health, I was finally empowered. The chief technology officer hired me. He started at this company, and I had worked with him at the previous company on a couple projects, and he said, Mariah, there's no design here. Nobody is deciding what our customers need. They're just making it up. And I said, awesome, I'll come do that. So I got to go, build a team. It's all telehealth. It was a lot of IoT because we worked with connected devices. We had dashboards that presented clinical information to nurses that were watching people take their own vitals at home. It was really a phenomenal experience. And for the first time, I started to get the opportunity to take the research and apply it in a meaningful way and empower my team even more so. There's nothing as rewarding as being able to empower your team to kind of autonomously go make these decisions. Which takes me to the place that I was before Pluralsight. Director of User Experience at Universal Minds. Again, this was an internal agency. They wanted to start a new branch. And so I had the opportunity to go help them shape what UX should be in the context of an agency. We got rid of the whole, hey, client, you get to pick whether you want research or not thing. Instead, it's like, hey, if you want expert design from us, research through delivery, you get all of it. You don't get to just tell us what to build. So being able to be the change maker in those areas is so exciting. But you can see, with this being my history and understanding product management, why I was so shocked when Nate came up to me and he said that they were actually doing this in practice in Utah. So this brings us to how excited I am to share what product management should be with you. So, what was so exciting about what Nate's team was doing? Well, all of these things they were doing day to day, 60 to 80% of their time, the PM and UX and developers probably spent about 10% of their time doing these things because they rotated through to be part of it. But the PM and UX couples, we call them, they're joined at the hip. And they were doing things weekly and daily, like talking to customers on calls, pulling the highlights out of those, and really understanding and unpacking what did we actually hear, going back and reviewing transcripts to remove bias, because we all bring personal bias when we go to talk to customers. User narratives. User narratives are cool because you get the whole team together. Because our developers participate, they get to stand up and be part of the process and say, well, here's what I was seeing. Here's what I think is technically feasible. And developers on these kind of activities are magical because then you unlock this technical creativity that so many of our old ways of working stifles when it comes to waterfall and focusing on just processes for kind of getting the development ball going, but not paying attention to how they get there. Actually designing, going and validating, iterating through different possibilities of what this can be together as these small co-located teams. They were releasing continuously. Last year, they released 61 experiences. And this year, we're about to start Q4? We're at 72. So we're going to hit even more velocity this year because they can move fast, because they can decide what it needs to be and inform this design instead of haggling over, what should the requirements be. Storytelling out to the company. Hey, company, this is what we're doing, working with product managers or product marketing managers to help sales create enablement materials, to help marketing go out and tell the story of what they're creating and the value behind it and the why we're creating this for customers. And then all of the collaboration was just mind blow. So again, how I ended up moving to Utah, they weren't just box checking, which is what I see at most organizations. They were doing true human-centered design, which is what I get so excited about. And to see a product manager role doing these things was oh so important. It was about this point that my brain is just melting. I'm is this an anomaly? Is this really a thing? Should I trust this? So like any good researcher, I went to Google. And I said, hey, Google, tell me what product manager is. And I first decided to check Wikipedia. I don't know. How many of you check Wikipedia first when you're fact-checking? All right, good. Got a few of you. I'm not the only one. I'm a lazy researcher sometimes. Not that you are. You're very unlazy. So the product manager here, I'm going to read this description. Communicates vision from the highest level of executive leadership development and implementation teams. Now, I don't know about you, but this was a little disheartening because I'm like, wait a second. This is all the stuff that I think is kind of painful for product teams, is somebody tells them what to build instead of telling them what outcome they're trying to achieve. So I'm like, all right, this isn't looking great. And then I thought, hey, I'm going to pick on this company. I've never heard of them before, but they have very high SEO, so it's their fault. AHA is a company that makes product management software. And so I thought, well, they make the software, right? They should know what a product manager is. But in fact, they said, it's similar to the concept of a brand manager at a consumer packaged goods company. I don't know where that... I'm like, you guys make the software. Don't you understand? So I was I'm like, I'm starting to feel like maybe Utah's a bad idea at this point. Maybe I've got it wrong. And then I'm like, okay, I'll check job postings. Lyft is a great example of a job posting because, you know, software as a service and they're a startup and they should kind of know these things. But even Lyft, they really focus more on the soft skills part of the equation and the years of experience and talked very little about what the actual product manager does. The only thing that I picked out was experience leading post-launch optimizations, including developing testing strategies. Which I'm like, okay, that's like 5% of what our product managers do, which is testing stuff once it goes out, looking at analytics. And so I was really starting to feel kind of defeated at this point. Until I was like, all right, there's got to be educational programs out there doing something. I know that it's a newish role, but come on, like, how are we educating our next generation? So University of Washington, they gave me a breath of fresh air because I was looking for product manager roles, and you see a lot of certs out there. You see a lot of post-education, post-college programs, some online courses, and part of their product management, they have a whole section of user-centered requirements, which I was like, yes, that's what I'm looking for. Learning methods for understanding customer context. Finally somebody gets it. We're actually going and educating people for the roles that they need to be in. And then I hit up some thought leadership, because I'm like, well, if education's getting it, maybe this is all maybe it's too early. Maybe the thought leaders are talking about it, which was indeed the case. This woman, Sue Racy, again, don't know her, good SEO. What are you going to do? She said the core activities of product management, what users are like, the problems and pains they face, the constraints they operate under, etc. And I'm like, hallelujah. I'm not crazy. This is a real thing. And same thing with Marty Kagan. He talks about what a product manager is. You know, it sits at this intersection of UX, tech, and business. You have to understand all of them, go really deep in one, and be able to articulate through all of them. So I was like, okay, phew, good. I'm going to move to Utah. So I did. Moved to Utah to go be part of this product team. So now, now that we know kind of the context of where product management sits, let's talk a little bit about what makes a really amazing PM? Can anybody tell me? What do you think? What do PMs have to do? Come on, give me a hand. I know you got, yes. Understand tech. Yes. Yes, they have to be an amazing communicator. Anybody else? All right, I'll take it. So there's three things that I think really make a PM very successful at the core. So listening, analysis, and prioritization. And these sound kind of nebulous, so I'm going to dig into these in a second and go really deep. Whenever I have people come to me, and no doubt, even within my own company, once or twice a week, somebody comes up to me and they go, Mariah, I'm really interested in product. What you guys do is cool. I want to go be part of it. And typically they ask me, what can I do to be a PM? Because they don't have visual design background. And typically they don't have a whole lot of development background. Is that 30 minutes left or at 30 minutes? Left. Sweet. Okay. And I say, well, tell me why you're interested in product, because they don't often have that background. And so these are the things that they say to me. They say, like, I'm a people person, and you talk to lots of people. Or I really like strategy as a human being, which to them means a lot of different things. Or I want to be a leader, because they think that PMs are leading the team. And so I know when I hear these things that this is my opportunity to educate on more context, because they might think that these are the things that are happening, but really there's something completely different that's happening. And the completely different things are these things. So I really believe that this kind of is the trifecta of what makes an amazing product manager. Instead of being a people person, you're really a multidimensional listener. Not only do you know how to professionally go and listen to people, which is interviewing and contextual research and understanding technology, you're also very good at listening to the people that you work with the team members and understanding what they're seeing through their lens as they're co-creating with you, with the business stakeholders that have a strategy and outcome that they want to achieve for their company. Where do you need to get to? What is the company's competency? How does opportunity with human beings and the problems you're seeing fit into that? The second thing is, you're not really like, I like strategy. It's not so much strategy as being a super analytical thinker, being able to take all of the things that you're hearing and break them down into a sub-segment of opportunities and paths your team could go down and co-create together, and analyzing what makes sense, what brings the most value first, and in what order. And then that brings us to our third one. You're not really a leader so much as you're facilitating prioritization. And prioritization is not putting things in a backlog. I'm sorry. Prioritization is understanding and reevaluating, periodically, and I would say every week. Does it make sense what we're building right now? What can we get out the door that brings value to the person that we're delivering it to? How do you break it down into the smallest incremental value and keep moving along? I used to work in healthcare. I understand the regulation hurdles that some of you might have to deal with when it comes to software development. But we all have to admit that we don't build skateboards often. We envision this mothership. So, once you have this analysis as a PM, how do you break that down into the most minimal thing instead of building something that is way bigger than it needs to be before you go deliver? So with this in mind as being the main anatomy that a PM has to be, let's really dig into some of these details, because it's great for me to tell somebody this, but it's not very practical when you're trying to go inform yourself or learn what it's like to be a PM. So I like to kind of do this with it. I like to take the multidimensional listener, analytical thinker, and informed prioritization and break it down into 3 categories that you see on the left-hand side here. Now, these are knowledge, practical skills, and soft skills. So what does that mean? Knowledge is the stuff that you have to have experience in when you go get your internship or you're doing projects in class. Knowledge are the foundational building blocks of what you have to bring to the table before I will even consider hiring you. And so from this standpoint, the 2 big knowledge things that people have had to understood in the multidimensional listener space is they've got to understand qualitative research methods. I have so many people that are like, I'd be a great PM. And I'm like, do you know how to interview somebody? I'm like, sure. They're like, sure. I'm like, well, tell me about it. Oh, well, I asked my brother about what he did last week, and he told me about it. I'm like, that's not the same thing. Like, this is what people spend a career learning how to do. And there is like a lightweight version that PMs need to know. They need to know how to write an unbiased question. They need to know how to ask that question to 12, 20, 200 people, and how to take that information and use it to inform their design. They also need to understand organizational design. And, the reason why organizational design is so important is you are going and interviewing a person, and they live in a context. They live in a company. They live within a life. And it's important to understand the answer that they're giving you in the context, particularly if you're doing any kind of software as a service that works within a context of a business. So for example, I have teams that build products for leaders of tech teams within companies. So you have, it could be a CTO, it could just be a dev manager, but we build products for them. And so when we build products for them, we have to understand the ecosystem that they work within in order to make the products make sense. Because we can ask them questions all day long about whether, what their personal pain points are, but if they don't fit into a bigger overall picture, it's not like apples to apples when you talk to a bunch of people. And then equally, when we're building things for learners, we're talking about learners within their organizations and their learning environments. So those are important things that they need to go learn. Now, not only do they need knowledge of how to acquire information about org design externally, they need to know how to work within our organization, because they're the lightning rod of communication. They have to talk to marketing, to sales, to our leadership. We have 18 product teams. They have to connect with the right product teams at the right times. So that is super important from a foundational knowledge standpoint. Now, once you have that foundational knowledge in listening, you really then have to have a bench of practical skills. And these practical skills are things that they will be tactically doing day to day within the job that I will be hiring them for. These practical skills include seeking context. And again, this context I just mentioned in organizational design, but it could be the context of working with somebody from marketing and understanding what they're trying to accomplish in their job, or even how they are as a human being. One of my most effective senior product managers, he goes to lunch with people all the time, just to be like, hey man, like, how was your weekend? Tell me about your life. Or, hey Dorothy, like, tell me about how your daughter's doing in school. I heard that she's playing softball now. And getting to know people and building this trust, that is oh so valuable. He even one time, we have a dev team in the Ukraine. He came back from the Ukraine, and I went to my desk one morning, and there was a chocolate bar on my desk. How many people leave you like little gifts on your desk? Like it's that kind of stuff that helps you build relationships and trust. It's pretty cool. You have to be able to do practical things like write a discussion guide, which are all the questions that you go and ask and seek, or even write a contextual inquiry. You need to be able to do narrative sessions, or things like narrative sessions, which is basically facilitating co-creation with a group of people. There is more to it than throwing Post-its on the table and saying, go. You have to be able to work with people and pull their ideas and information out based on what they were hearing when they were participating with you in all of the research. And then just sharing the research. And then I say design. Now, design is with a big D. I don't expect my product managers to be amazing UI designers, but I expect them to be able to draw a button with a marker on a white sheet of paper. Like, they have to be able to take what's in their head and articulate it and work with other people in that manner. So now that we've looked at knowledge and we've looked at practical skills, that takes us down to soft skills. Now, soft skills are what HR calls cultural fit, but it's what your coworkers call not being a jerk. And this is oh so important. Again, it throws back to the trust that product managers do. They really have to feel comfortable and confident and get inside, walk a mile in somebody else's shoes and be very selfless. Being humble, being really excited and motivated. Like, that's another thing I look for when I talk to somebody. I'm like, you want to be a PM? Like, how much do you want it? Like, how excited are you to go solve these problems for people? Because I am super excited, and I'm a total nerd about it, and it's going to be a drag if you're just doing this job to get the paycheck. Like, you got to want to do it. People can tell. You also have to be highly emotionally intelligent, not only because it's a valuable skill when you're doing contextual inquiry, when you're interviewing people, but it's also good to be able to see that in other people. We UX and we use research skills outside of our org, and we don't take the time to look at the people around us and see like what they're thinking and how they're reacting and how things are occurring to them. So now that we kind of have understood the multi-dimensional listener part, hopefully this gives you some concrete examples of like what you can go and research and learn if you want to build this bench of skills. Next, we really start to look at the analytical thinker portion. So to be an excellent analytical thinker as a product manager, the things that the knowledge you need to bring with you, the experience you need to have is really the quantitative research methods. So we talked about the qualitative, but we are in like an amazing era of data, and if you don't know how to tap in to your data and pull metrics, you're going to be in trouble. So that's something I would like to see in a PM when they come to the table, and it could be like just tracking how the user lands on things within pages, monthly active users, what the drop-off rates are. There's some very baseline things. You don't have to be like an amazing data science wizard, but you've got to know enough to be dangerous and work with the people that are. This goes into really understanding business strategy. How do those metrics and KPIs like roll up to what the company's trying to do? And then the industry and market that you're in is really important to get your hands around. From a practical skill standpoint, you've got secondary and market research, research synthesis, critique and iteration, and metrics. These are the things that they're going to be doing every day in this area. And then you're going to do a lot of co-creation with people. So being able to bring that self to the table and really admit as a PM that you're not going to anchor on your idea, you're going to help others facilitate their ideas. Last but not least, under informed prioritization, the experience that you need to bring, I want to see some experience in interaction and system design. I get a lot of people that are like, oh, no, I'm really good at prioritizing things, but they don't understand the technology that they're working in. They don't understand how you actually execute. And if you don't get that, how do you prioritize? The technical implementation is important. I know a lot of companies require PMs to have computer science degrees. I don't believe that's necessary unless you're working in an area that is very, very highly technical. But for most software as a service, I don't think you need that. But you do have to know enough, again, to be dangerous. And then you have to really understand the processes, methodologies, and frameworks that your company uses coming into the job. Otherwise, the company is teaching you how to do your job. Practical skills, you've got to be clear and concise with communication. You can't be one of those people that likes to pontificate, again, being a good listener. And then, and prioritization, figuring out, like, what makes sense, what can you get out the door. And last but not least, like, you have got to be a teacher, because your job as a PM is to teach the company how to teach the world why you've made the decision and what value it's actually bringing to your customers. And be a cheerleader. You've got to cheer your team on. Your development team released something, take them out for drinks. Your UX designer did some like amazing design that has like landed well with customers. You need to go like talk about it at your Monday morning meeting. You've got to cheer that team on. It's really, really important for the culture and the trust. So lesson number 3, org design for PM. Now that you know what a PM should be, you know why it's important in the context, how do we need to create a world around PMs to enable them to do those things that we talked about? So where is a PM in a modern organization? Can anybody tell me where a PM is? Anybody? Yes. They are on a delivery team. Where else are they? Somebody just let the cat out of the bag up front. Yes, it's everywhere. They have to be everywhere. Usually they sit on a delivery team or in product, but they have to be everywhere. They have to be hooked in and connected into everywhere in your company in order for them to truly be effective. They can't be siloed. So quickly, I'm going to go through the org design. If you're in an outdated company, if you're in a company, here are 5 different metrics, which are on the left-hand side, which are very important for you to understand because it helps you benchmark if your PM is able to be as effective as possible. Outdated companies, within scope, they only have PMs in certain parts of the experience. The PM is not part of the strategy because it typically is getting fed to them, which makes them not very effective and mostly Gantt chart makers. Research, maybe they're doing some usability testing, but that's about it. No testing or figuring out what to do before then. For design, you might have like an individual designer on a team that could work alongside the PM. And then for staffing, you have these generalist PMs that don't go super deep in one area, which is a problem, particularly if you have a very technical product that needs a specific set of knowledge in order to be very powerful. Now, if your company is progressing, the scope the PM is looking at a complete experience. They have KPIs, they're doing early discovery on these things. The strategy, they're gathering some requirements, they're doing a little bit of discovery, but not a ton. They are doing some ethnographic research, which means they're probably talking to some customers, which is a good start. They've got a design team that they're working with. And then as far as staffing, you might have a multidisciplinary team. So you've got a PM and UX and some developers, maybe a data scientist. Again, it just depends. And then if you're in an amazing modern organization, what you're going to see with scope is the PMs are empowered to create integrated experiences with each other. This is still, there's not one way to do it. Some companies are using elastic teams where the PMs are, you might have a few PMs and then they break the teams apart to work on different parts, but they're still working together. I don't only have 5 minutes, so I'm not going to dig into that right now. But you'll see integrated scope across product managers. For strategy, the PM is driving the strategy. I mean, they and the team are the ones talking to customers every day. How powerful is it to let kind of the groundswell of the bottom up inform what you're trying to achieve for the customer, which is how it works in the company that I work at. For research, they're doing both a qualitative and quantitative. They're hooked into whatever Adobe Analytics or Analytics platform they're using to really measure things once they're out there in the universe. For design, they consider themselves an experience team. Experience is a core fundamental philosophy of what they're doing. And last but not least, there is an executive leader who is over-experienced that says, this is how we're going to go do this, and empowers the team to have the autonomy and accountability to bring these experiences to the level that they need to be based on what they're hearing. So, just to recap, as we finish up, why is there such a wide variation? New role. Okay, we're going to say it together, okay? 1, 2, 3. Product manager is a newish role. All right, one more time. Product manager is a newish role. Hey, okay. Starting to get there. We're going to do it 3 times. You starting to see? All right, what are the 3 things that make a PM successful? Listening, analysis, and prioritization. All right? And last but not least, where is PM in a modern organization? Everywhere. Awesome. I was so excited to be here with you guys today. Thank you so much for your time.